Yo, what's going on everybody? NG is back again for another video. At long last, welcome to my spoiler-filled review for none other than Spider-Man Homecoming. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, finally gotten around to doing this video. If you haven't seen Spider-Man Homecoming yet and you want to get my general consensus and thoughts of the movie, make sure you check out my previous video, which was my spoiler-free review. If you just randomly clicked on this video because it showed up in your subscription feed, you don't even know what the fuck a Spider-Man is, then stay tuned and leave a comment if you're one of those cats. So, like I said, this video we're going to be talking about all the nitty-gritty details of the movie that I couldn't discuss in my regular review, in addition to some of the other things that aren't really spoilers per se, but I forgot to hit on them in my spoiler-free review. So we might as well just tackle those two things first, because it's a very short list. This one in particular, anyone who's seen the movie or has seen any articles that have come out about the movie understand where I'm coming from with this. So the movie opens up with the aftermath of the Battle of New York. Yes, the big giant battle in New York City where all the Avengers assembled for the very first time to take down Loki's army, right? We see Michael Keaton and his crew cleaning up the damage of that movie. Now that stuff isn't really significant per se, but it's what you hear afterwards. It's what you hear about the timeline of the movie. That battle supposedly takes place 8 years before the events of Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man Homecoming takes place in the fall of 2016. It's a few months after Civil War. So you gotta figure, 2016 minus 8. That puts us in 2008, right? Which is supposedly when the Battle of New York took place in this continuity. You already get where I'm coming from with this, right? So that thing took place in 2008. How could that take place in 2008 when the first Iron Man movie supposedly took place in 2008? Right? Apparently not, because Iron Man 1 supposedly takes place in 2010 because Iron Man 2 is set in 2010 and Iron Man 2 is set a couple months after the events of Iron Man 1, and that was... As you can see, the MCU timeline is just fucking ridiculous at this point. I know it's not a big major deal, but, you know, for continuity's sake, when you're watching all these damn movies, it's kind of weird to sit there and say, wow, you know, this is awesome because the MCU movies are aging in real time. You know, this movie came out in 2015, it takes place in 2015. Oh, in Civil War, they're talking about an event that happened a couple years ago in Winter Soldier. This is awesome. No. Shit just went left. Shit just got fucking crazy. It's not a major deal, I know, but it's just like, you would think that the writers and everyone would be a lot more consistent with these things. You know? You know what I'm saying? Regardless of that, timelines aside, it was starting to sound like the Fox universe. There was something else I wanted to talk about in my review, and that was the score of the movie. Again, not a major aspect or, you know, something that you need to do in a video, but I gotta say, I was kind of led down by the score of Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, don't get me wrong, I am a big fan of Michael Giacchino, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, right? I see, I'm a big fan of him, but I don't know how to pronounce it. It's just all the C's and the H's and the N's in his name. It's just, it can go either way. I'm a big fan of the stuff that he's done in the past. You know, in recent memory, his scores for Up, his scores for Doctor Strange, Star Trek, you know, those are pretty damn good. But this one in particular just kind of felt very underwhelming, if you will. Now, I have heard some reports from people that, you know, he only had a couple of weeks to write this score as opposed to other ones, and that they were trying to go for a very laid-back sort of vibe, nothing really bombastic, because if you watch Spider-Man Homecoming, it's not one of the most explosive Marvel movies out there, and it's not trying to be, so maybe the score is trying to reflect that, but it's just kind of sad because, you know, all the Spider-Man movies that we've had in the past, from Raimi to Webb, you know, the composers from James Horner to Hans Zimmer, Danny Elfman, they've all put their own little, you know, stamp on the Spider-Man legacy, and the only thing that I see that we've gotten from Michael is a updated version of the classic 60s theme, which is awesome, by the way, don't get it twisted. But I gotta say that I was expecting a little bit more. I mean, it's serviceable, you know, it hits when it has to, but it's just kind of like, wow, I'm not really gonna remember too much from the soundtrack, you know what I'm saying? Who knows, maybe in the sequel, if he does come back, he'll be able to really, you know, put his mark on the Spider-Man legacy, and maybe that's when they're gonna go balls to the wall insane with all the epic set pieces. Who knows, we'll see. But that's really two of the things that I want to hit on first. Now let's get into the spoilers of the movie. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss, and I already know some people have been doing videos in regards to certain things on characters and, you know, the differences between the characters and this and that. So I want to first tackle something that has been prevalent on both sides of the aisle, this whole diversity debacle when it comes to Spider-Man's cast. You know, outside of Peter Parker and Aunt May and of course, you know, the other established MCU characters, everybody is complaining that the cast is too diverse. There's so many black people. There's so many, you know, Hispanics. There's just anything you want to say in the book. But, you know, it's kind of funny because you would think that, oh, yeah, those people are just racist. They don't want to see blah, blah, blah in the movies. But, you know, it's not just those people. You have another group of people who are complaining that there's not enough diversity in this movie because there's, you know, just these characters that doesn't make up for the overarching problem that the MCU has. It just, like, I feel like people should just be honest with what they're saying. The reason why those people who are saying there's not enough diversity is because they wanted Miles Morales to be a star, and he's not. And they're pissed off. They're pissed off that Peter, a much better written character, is the star of these movies. How terrible. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have those people out there who are complaining because they want it to be comic book accuracy, and we just need all these people because this was written in the 60s, and it needs to stay like the 60s. Guys, I'm the last person who wants forced diversity in the movies. But can we just be real for a second? Where does this movie take place? This movie takes place in one of the 5 boroughs, Queens, New York. If you know anything about Queens, New York, it is one of the most diverse places on the freaking planet. So you are going to see a lot of different people in there. You just got to accept that. This is not a sign of forced diversity. They're not trying to fit any quotas by putting these characters in there. No, it's just a sign that they have this character and, you know, they're setting it in Queens. So, hey, maybe that character could be black, or maybe that character, you know, could be Indian. Maybe that character could be Hispanic. It's just one of those things that happens. It's not a big deal. They're not trying to tie the race into the character. I understand that, yes, if race isn't a big deal, why are they changing the characters? I get that, but at the same time, you guys got to pick your battles. You got to pick your fights, and this is not a hill you want to die on because it makes no fucking sense. Everybody knows it doesn't make any fucking sense, so you just need to stop this nonsense. Likewise, the people on the opposite end of the spectrum, pace yourselves. That's all I can say. Pace your freaking selves, because by you guys complaining that there's not enough diversity in these movies, you're fighting a battle you don't really want to fight, because at that point, you're just asking them to pander to you. You're asking them to pander to you in the worst possible way. And the funny thing is when you've gotten those situations where they create these heroes for you, they're usually shitty written characters, or if we get those good characters, y'all don't support them. You know, you talk about having this diversity and we just need these characters, we need to give them a shot, yet y'all motherfuckers don't go out and buy their books. I mean, y'all over here talk about Miles Morales is great, Miles Morales is awesome. Why does he have such low readership? Exactly. My point, exactly. Why? Because he's overhyped, because he's black and this and that. Yeah. Not a great written character. Exactly. The point that I'm making. So yeah, this whole diversity debacle, both sides of the aisle are fucking retarded. Anyways, let's move into some of the characters themselves in that group. I want to talk about Flash Thompson, because I know a lot of people were very pissed off with the fact that, you know, he's not the stereotypical big, bulky, white guy jock. I mean, to be honest, at first I was kind of like, really, this is the guy they're picking to play Flash Thompson, because you know Flash Thompson. But the more and more I saw from his performance, I kind of get what they were going for. They were going for the more modern bully. And nowadays, bullies aren't necessarily the biggest, beefiest guys. Bullying, for the most part, depending on where you go, it could be a very mental thing, and bullying doesn't have to be getting beat up. Bullying could be being name called, you know, just all this nonsense. It could be a very mental thing. And that's what they were trying to go for with this Flash. He comes off as the very spoiled, privileged, rich kid who can make all these comments, you know, trying to be the life of the party or whatever. And in that way, I think it worked, because it still made me hate this Flash Thompson. I think they kind of went overboard with him being a pansy, like when he was escaping the elevator. He's like, take my trophy, when they were all gonna freaking die. I think they went overboard with that. But as a whole, I can't really hate, you know, Tony Revolori playing Flash. I just think they should have downtoned some of the things. Hopefully, when they get into future movies, he kind of comes into his own. I just felt that the guy they had in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, Chris whatever, I liked the arc that he had as Flash, because he went from being, you know, the typical bully, you know, to kind of warming up to Peter, and then, you know, him ending up having Spider-Man as his hero. So I thought it was just handled better in the other movies. But as a whole, I don't really have a problem with Flash Thompson, or have a problem with Betty, or well, she was barely in the movie to begin with. I don't have a problem with Liz Allen. I don't really have a problem with, you know, Peter's friend, Ned. I don't have a problem with any of those guys, because I feel like they sort of serve their purpose. I mean, yes, you would expect it to be more focused on the entire high school clique, because they were billing this as the Breakfast Club. But at the end of the day, we came to this movie to see Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and that's what we got out of the movie. We got a story about Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But there is one member of the clique that I do need to touch on, because this is honestly one of my only negatives for the film. I want to talk about Zendaya's character in the movie, Michelle, and you guys already know the big reveal that happens at the end. She says that her name is Michelle, but her friends call her MJ. Now, a lot of people are taking this the wrong way. A lot of people are taking this in so many different directions. A lot of people assume that this means that this is going to be their interpretation of Mary Jane Watson's, because her name is Michelle Jones, MJ. This is where I'm kind of confused, because on the one hand, I think they were just trying to put in just an Easter egg in there to acknowledge that Mary Jane exists. But on the other end of the spectrum, I feel like it's kind of a half-assed cop-out to the backlash. You guys might recall last year when it was rumored that Zendaya was going to be playing Mary Jane. All the racists came out and said that, no, she can't play Mary Jane. She needs red hair, this, that, and there. Just the usual stuff. And I kind of felt that they heard that with the backlash, and they were just like, no, she's not playing Mary Jane. But they put this in towards the end to sort of, I guess, appease people. And to be honest, I don't think it worked out very well. In my theater in particular, I went to the earliest Thursday showing. It was a packed show filled with a ton of Spider-Man fans, and there was just like an audible groan that was heard from everybody. It was just like, really? You're gonna do this? Really? Because it doesn't feel genuine. Like, I would be all for Zendaya playing Mary Jane Watson. I have no problem with that. I like Zendaya. She's cool. But the way they went about this, the execution is just, it's stupid. It's just forced, it's contrived, it just doesn't make any sense. If you're gonna make her Mary Jane, make her Mary Jane. Don't do this, oh, is she not Mary Jane? Because what happens in the next movie when, let's say for example, they actually introduce a Mary Jane Watson, you know, standard redhead, it just feels like that'd be a response to the backlash's backlash. So it's just like, I felt like they had no heart and soul that went into that decision, you know, and that's what it feels like with some of the other Easter eggs in this movie. I know they're trying to start this lore building, not world building, lore building, but it just feels like their heart really wasn't in it because they were kind of testing the waters on things. But overall, Michelle's character, she was alright. She was the resident, I don't want to say the dick of the group, but she was just very reserved, minded her own business. You know, she had the snarky comments, sarcastic comments to say, and she was cool. I just wish that we got more out of her in the movie to kind of warrant them pulling a whole, oh, this is Mary Jane, you know? It's because you wouldn't put Ned Leeds in a situation where it's like, yeah, you know, my name is Ned, my friends call me Harry Osborn. Like, really? What? No, it just... If you're going to be different just for the sake of being different, it's stupid and it doesn't make sense in this context. Either make her the character or don't. Move on with it. Like we are going to move on to some of the other things of this movie. Since we're talking about Peter's clique, we might as well talk about Peter in this movie. This is one of the main reasons why I loved Spider-Man Homecoming so much, because it defied all of our expectations. A lot of people assumed that this would be a Tony Stark vehicle. This movie would be fueled on him. He would be the father figure, mentor to Peter. Tony's barely in the movie. He's in the movie for maybe a combined total of 8 to 10 minutes. That's basically it. Every scene in the trailer you've seen, that's where Tony Stark makes an appearance. This movie is very much a Peter vehicle, and it's all about him coming into his own. It's him coming into, you know, his identity as Spider-Man, in addition to figuring out who Peter Parker is, and just growing up, life, going through teenage stuff. And by the end of this movie, where he rejects the Iron Spider suit mock-up from Tony Stark, you know, that showed a sign of growth. It showed that, hey, you know, I just need to do my own thing, which is what Spider-Man is all about. He's never really had an allegiance to a team. Like, he's been involved with them. Sure, they've gone on missions together and done things, but being an Avenger, being an X-Men was never really his main goal. So that what I loved in this movie is that he kind of rejected that. He said that I'm going to do my own thing, because sometimes you need to have a person who's looking out for the little guy. Because Tony Stark, Captain America, Thor, all these guys deal with the bigger threats. Sometimes you need a Spider-Man, or in some cases a Daredevil, to protect, you know, the 5 boroughs, man. So that was a really big character growth moment that we've seen with Peter in these movies, and I really did love that. I just loved how they aren't trying to make him a Spider sidekick like a lot of people are claiming. They're saying that, oh, he's just going to be the next Iron Man at this rate. No, he's coming into his own as his own character. They're doing this for a specific reason, because they know Captain America and Iron Man, these characters aren't going to be around a long time in the MCU. So they need to build up this new team of Avengers. They need to build up Peter. They need to build up, you know, Doctor Strange. They need to build up T'Challa. They have to build these characters by making them independent and not relying on the team, which is freaking amazing. I love that about the film. In addition to that, the whole him dealing with his suit thing I thought was kind of funny. I thought that him having an AI was pretty cool because, again, it showed how inexperienced this Peter Parker is. You know, when he took off the training wheels protocol, you know, he was expecting to be a master with the suit or whatever. He tried doing his first move, you know, he fell flat out, almost exposed himself to the enemies. So it just goes to show you that this suit was doing the work for the most part for Peter, and he actually had to learn to utilize his powers by himself. Like, there's no other way to spin that situation, and it kind of goes against all the notions that people were saying that, oh, he's Spider AI and this, that, and the third. No, you know, you saw what happens when he became overly reliant on the suit. So I thought that was pretty cool. Some of the other things in the movie that I thought were interesting. I do like how they handled the multiple shockers. When I heard at first that they were going to be having 2 variations of the shocker, I was like, oh, okay, so he's going to have to take down 2 shockers. All right. But it's done pretty organically. The first shocker, it was very, very reckless, and essentially Michael Keaton guts him out of the equation. And the other guy becomes Shocker, and he's the main Shocker for the majority of the movie. He's the one who Peter has a encounter with after prom. And yeah, I just loved the way that they introduced a lot of these smaller C-list villains into the film, because when you look at some of the biggest problems that existed in Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, they were trying to introduce all these villains in one movie and make them, you know, just lead up for the final encounter. But it wasn't really handled well because they weren't as organic as they could have been. In this movie, you know, it knows what it knows what it wanted to do with the characters. It knew that, you know, they were going to be underlings to the Vulture. They would help him in his goal, and they would do their own things, you know. So having the Shocker, Tinkerer, and the Vulture all in one movie, at first it seemed like it was going to be very overcrowded, but it works. It works fine. It's serviceable. I know some people were pissed off that, you know, they didn't have bigger roles than they did. But to be honest, guys, if they did have bigger roles, we'd be complaining that there was already too many villains. You know, I think that movies can get away with having 2 villains at the most, 2 quality developed villains. But if you have 1 quality developed villain like the Vulture, and then you have these underlings who have, you know, a couple minutes screen time, you know, and they serve their purpose, I think that's the best way to handle this sort of situation. Let's talk about another villain that exists, well, former villain that existed in the Marvel comic universe and is making his MCU debut. The Prowler, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the mysterious character played by none other than Donald Glover himself is Aaron Davis, also known as the Prowler. Unfortunately, he's not the original Prowler, aka Best Prowler, aka Hobby Brown, but he is playing a variation of the Prowler here. And of course, Aaron Davis, as you guys know, is the uncle to one Miles Morales. And in this movie, it shows that, like, this is the weird thing I don't understand. This is where they go into another Easter egg debacle, because when they're looking up his file in the police records, it says known alias is the Prowler. But the vibe that Donald Glover gives off is that it just sounds like he's just a street level criminal. You know, he's just trying to, you know, rob a bank or whatever just to do this sort of thing. He does, you know, there is the moment in the movie, I don't know if a lot of people caught it, but in the movie when they're trying to sell him on this advanced alien weaponry, you know, they say, oh, we got this type of weapons, those kind of weapons, we got some climbers, and he was just like, look, man, I don't really need those. Did you say climbers? You know, that's a pretty big reference to the Prowler. But again, has he been established as the Prowler? Has he been doing this, you know, for a couple of months? Has he even thought about it? Because the fact that it says his alias is the Prowler makes it seem like, okay, he's been the Prowler for a while. But the aura he's giving off, it just shows that, like, he hasn't really doing it for a while. I feel like if you have a name when you're doing something, you got to be pretty far along in your career, be it a superhero or a supervillain, you know? Whether he becomes the Prowler at some point, I don't know, but I do think that Donald Glover would be up for returning since he is a big Spider-Man fan, and I think that it would be nice to develop more of the Spider-Man characters in the universe that aren't necessarily just villains, because You know, the Prowler, and what I love about his story is that he starts off as a villain. He starts off as a criminal who is just trying to, just do his best and live his life, support his family, and just what happens with him is very tragic. And the fact that he becomes a hero at the end of it, I think, was a very great character arc. So if they can do something similar with this character, I think it will be cool. And it would be nice to develop the Spider-Man universe with alternate characters and not have it be handled by, Sony. Yeah. But yeah, that was basically it for him. He didn't have a lot of screen time. He just had 2 scenes with a couple of lines. And he was aight, man. Whether they do something with him in the future remains to be seen. Miles Morales, on the other hand, I know a lot of folks think that this means that Miles is confirmed for the future. Guys, let me say this. You know I'm not a big fan of Miles Morales. I do not understand the hype behind him. I think his entire inclusion in this universe is, well, not this universe, but the comic universe, is just to pander to people who think they can't relate to Spider-Man because he's not black. But we got to pace ourselves here. If we are going to introduce other Spider-Men, we need to get the foundations right with Peter. Peter still needs to develop, so we can't be having multiple Spider-Men running around when we don't even have Peter Parker fully established yet. Again, if we're going to pace this out long term, yes, I think we can introduce Miles Morales and have him go off in his own journey. But not before we take care of Peter and make sure he's fine. Guys, this is the 3rd Spider-Man iteration in less than 20 years. Wouldn't you want them to get Peter Parker right first, which shouldn't be hard at all, before we tackle other people like Miles Morales and, God forbid, Spider-Gwen and all these other stupid iterations? Listen. If Miles Morales is going to be introduced, it needs to be done organically. They can't kill Peter off. They cannot do that, because how's it going to look when you spend so much time trying to get a guy into a movie and you kill him 3 movies in? It's like, what? They need to just introduce him just in a very organic way, like they've been doing everybody else. There needs to be a reason. We can't just throw him in there to throw a bone to the vocal minority, which, yes, most of the people who want Miles Morales in the movies are a vocal minority. You can't tell me that they aren't. Like, seriously, they're the loudest vocal minority I've ever heard in existence, There are more people who are pining for Miles Morales to be in a Spider-Man movie than freaking Static Shock, and that hurts me tremendously as a big fan of Static. But yeah, if they introduce him, cool. If not, that's perfectly fine. We got other things we needed to handle, okay? We just gotta take our time. Take our time, y'all. Oh, what else was there to talk about in the movie? What else? Yes, let's discuss Michael Keaton and the big twist of the film. Yeah, man, this is honestly what took me by surprise, because I didn't expect it at all. Yeah, Michael Keaton is the father of Liz Allen in this movie. Definitely didn't see that coming. Someone insert Persona 5 music right there. That was actually a pretty damn cool twist, because when Peter opens up the door, well, he gets the door open for him at Liz's house. He's picking her up for prom, and he just sees, the freaking Vulture right there. It's like, oh shit, man. Adrian Toomes knows who Peter is, knew he was taking to prom, but it was like, no, he doesn't know. And just that entire scene for like the next 5 minutes, where he's driving both of them to prom, and he's slowly uncovering Peter's identity as Spider-Man. That was one of the, I think, the best scenes in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. The only scene that I think, just was handled 10 times better in recent memory anyway, was in Civil War, when they were having that first interrogation after General Ross introduced the Sokovia Accords, where, Steve is talking about, they can't budge and everything. If we sign this, we surrender our right to choose. This was like that, but on the opposite end of the extreme. It was just very cold, isolated, very tense. It's just like, what would you do in that situation? Your arch enemy, you're taking his daughter to prom, and you just found that out all within the span of 5 minutes, and you better hope and pray he doesn't know who you are. That was just so freaking cool. Like, I was geeking out, gushing out, and I was scared all at the same time during the movie, man. So, hats off to Tom Holland for making it believable, and of course Michael Keaton for being a freaking badass. But we already knew those 2 points. So yeah, that twist was really awesome. Just in general, the Vulture really doesn't come off as a villain. I mean, he's the best villain that Marvel's done to date, but he doesn't come off like that. I mean, because you sympathize with him all throughout the entire movie. So even by the end, you know what he's doing is wrong, but you're just like, yo. I mean, he said it's one more gig, and to be honest, I believe him, because he's just trying to make ends meet for his family. He's not trying to be this crazy supervillain. He's just trying to get what's owed to him, and that's it. So all the while, you're thinking to yourself that that's the final straw, but who knows? You know, the villainy path that these characters walk down, there seems to be no end, and who knows how far they'll go. Speaking of villains, perfect segue. I'm doing a really good job at actually, you know, making all the bits weave into each other. I'm very proud of myself. It's taken me almost 10 years to do that, but yes, we're getting there, ladies and gentlemen. One of the 2 post-credit scenes features Michael Keaton. I keep saying Michael Keaton. I should start saying Adrian Toomes, you know, his character name, but so easy to say Michael Keaton. It features him, you know, in prison and everything, and he runs into Matt Gargan, who's also, as you guys know, he was revealed to be the one and only Scorpion. So what could that mean? You got 2 Spider-Man villains established. Well, one is a villain, but not yet. You got 2 of these guys here in the prison, and Scorpion's talking about how he has guys on the outside who want to take down Spider-Man. Guys on the outside. Rhino. Electro. Sinister Six build-up, maybe. You see, that's the one thing that I love. I love how they're introducing these things, but it's very calculated. It's very small. They're not trying to say that we have a giant plan and they're going to show it in the end credits, all the weaponry for these villains. You know what I'm saying? So, could there be a Sinister Six team up in the future? Possibly. I'm excited to see where a proper Sinister Six build-up takes us. But time and patience is what we need in these movies. We don't need all this rushing. We don't need this world building. We don't need what's the biggest problems that plagued the last 2 Spider-Man franchises. We don't need it for this one. We just gotta take our time, play the waiting game. Tom Holland said he's down to play Peter Parker for like the next 30 years. So let's just take it slow. Let's take it slow, y'all. All right. Was there anything else I wanted to talk about in the movie? For the most part, I think I hammered in on all the points. I mean, I talked about Zendaya. I talked about the Vulture. I talked about, you know, just all the things that kind of irked me in the film. But yeah, I mean, other than that, the movie was great. It is kind of lore-defying for the Spider-Man universe. I mean, Aunt May knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man as a kid, so that's going to be an interesting dynamic going forward in the future, and how that relates to Uncle Ben and just her worrying all the time. That's going to be interesting. So yeah, wherever this future franchise takes us, I'm on board, man. I'm really liking what they're doing. I know a lot of people are complaining that, you know, he's too young in this film and he's not really the Spider-Man that we know and love. Guys, we got to get him up to that point. You know what I'm saying? We got to, like the scene where all the scaffolding is on him and he realizes that, you know, it's not necessarily the mask or the costume that makes him Spider-Man. It's him. It's who he is. Those kind of scenes are what we need from Peter. We don't need to see him be this established veteran Spider-Man like the past 2 movies. Okay? I know I'm kind of sounding like a broken record at this point, but it's just, it is what it is, man. Time. It's needed. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, I've been babbling on for damn near 30 minutes. Oh boy. If you stuck through this entire video on one sitting, let me know. Comment down below. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate any of you guys who are watching this video, first and foremost. You're all awesome, regardless of things. For me, for now, my name is NGS, signing out. And like always, I will catch you guys later. Peace.